I am Alara Finch, and I am 28 years old. For most of my life, I believed love meant patience, sacrifice, and endurance. I believed that if you stayed long enough, gave enough, and loved deeply enough, the person beside you would eventually see your worth. That belief carried me into marriage, kept me quiet through years of discomfort, and nearly convinced me that disrespect was something I deserved. I married a man named Nathan Finch, thinking I had found safety. I didn't know I was slowly walking into a place where my presence would become something he tried to hide. Before this story continues, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Stories like this reach people who need to hear that they are not alone, and your support helps these stories travel farther than silence ever could. Nathan and I met in Rivermark, a growing coastal city where ambition filled the air. He was studying corporate finance at the time, always neatly dressed, always talking about where he was headed. I was drawn to his certainty. He spoke about the future like it was already mapped out, and when he looked at me, he made me feel chosen. He said I was grounding, calming, different from the women who chased appearances. When he proposed, he promised partnership. I believed him completely. The early years of our marriage were hard, but I didn't see that as a warning. Nathan's tuition was expensive, and his internship barely paid. I worked long shifts at a small cafe near the harbor, often standing until my legs ached. My paycheck covered rent, groceries, utilities, and sometimes even his textbooks. I told myself love was teamwork. I told myself this was temporary. I believed that when his career finally took off, we would rise together. But success didn't soften Nathan. It sharpened him. At first, the changes were quiet. Compliments became rare. Jokes about my weight slipped in disguised as humor. Suggestions about my clothes sounded like advice but felt like correction. If I laughed freely at events, he whispered that I was too loud. If I stayed quiet, he accused me of being dull. Slowly, I learned how to shrink without realizing it. I adjusted my voice, my posture, my clothes, even my smile, all to avoid that look of irritation in his eyes. The night everything finally cracked, Nathan came home holding an ivory envelope like it was a trophy. His eyes sparkled with excitement I hadn't seen in years. "It's from Caleb Rowland," he said proudly. "My director." Caleb Rowland was powerful, wealthy, and deeply connected. Nathan spoke his name with reverence. Inside the envelope was an invitation to Caleb's wedding, hosted at the Crestfall Pavilion, a luxury venue overlooking the ocean. Nathan talked nonstop about the guest list, the exposure, the opportunities. He said attending could change everything. He said this night mattered more than anything that had come before. I listened quietly, smiling, until I asked the most natural question a wife could ask. "So, what should I wear?" The excitement vanished from his face. "You're not coming," he said flatly. I laughed at first, thinking it was a joke. "I'm your wife, Nathan." He sighed like I was being unreasonable. "Alara, be realistic. Those people are polished. Refined. You wouldn't fit in." My chest tightened. "What are you saying?" He avoided my eyes. "I can't afford to be embarrassed. Not at something this important. You're not presentable enough." The words landed slowly, painfully. Not presentable. Not enough. Not worth standing beside. I felt my throat close, my hands go cold. This was the same man who once told me I was beautiful even when I came home exhausted and smelling like coffee grounds. Now he was asking me to disappear for the sake of his image. That night, I lay awake beside him while he slept peacefully. Shame pressed down on my chest, heavy and suffocating. But beneath it, something unfamiliar stirred. Anger. Clarity. A quiet understanding that this moment wasn't sudden. This wasn't about a wedding. This was about years of erosion. Nathan didn't want a partner anymore. He wanted a polished accessory. And the moment I stopped fitting the image he needed, he decided I should be hidden. As the ceiling fan spun slowly above us, I made a promise to myself. I would not disappear. I would not keep shrinking. And whatever came next, I would face it standing. The morning after Nathan told me I wasn't presentable enough to attend his director's wedding, I woke up before dawn. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic outside. I sat at the kitchen table with a mug of tea growing cold in my hands, staring at nothing. The pain hadn't softened overnight. If anything, it felt clearer, sharper, like a truth that could no longer be ignored. Nathan moved around the bedroom getting ready for work, humming softly to himself. He didn't mention the night before. He didn't apologize. To him, the matter was settled. I was staying home. He was moving forward. That silence told me everything I needed to know. When he left, I locked the door behind him and leaned my forehead against the wood. For the first time in years, I let myself cry. Not loud sobs, just quiet tears sliding down my face as I finally admitted what I had been avoiding. My husband wasn't cruel by accident. He was cruel by choice. I called my best friend, Maren Holt, because I knew she wouldn't soften the truth for my comfort. The moment she heard my voice, she stopped me mid-sentence. "What did he do this time?" she asked. I told her everything. The invitation. The wedding. The words he used. The way he looked at me like I was something embarrassing. When I finished, there was a brief silence on the line. Then Maren spoke, her voice calm but fierce. "Ilara, you're going to that wedding." I laughed weakly. "He made it clear I'm not wanted there." "That's his fear talking," she said. "Not reality." 2 days later, Maren showed up at my apartment with garment bags hanging from her arms and determination written all over her face. She didn't ask permission. She walked straight into my bedroom and laid everything out like she was preparing for battle. Dresses, shoes, jewelry, makeup. My small room suddenly looked like a private boutique. She held up a deep wine-colored gown and pressed it gently against me. "This," she said. "This is strength." I shook my head. "It's too much." "No," she replied. "It's exactly enough." She worked carefully, curling my hair into soft waves, applying makeup that highlighted my features instead of hiding them. As she worked, I noticed something strange. I was sitting straighter. My shoulders were back. My reflection didn't look small. It looked steady. When she turned me toward the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Not because I looked different, but because I looked awake. Present. Whole. The night of the wedding, I arrived alone at the Crestfall Pavilion. The building glowed against the dark sky, lights reflecting off the ocean behind it. Luxury cars lined the entrance. Guests moved confidently through the doors in gowns and tailored suits. For a moment, doubt crept in, whispering that Nathan had been right. Then I caught my reflection in the glass doors. I lifted my chin and walked inside. The ballroom opened up in front of me, filled with soft music, white flowers, and polished marble floors. Conversations hummed through the air. I scanned the room and found Nathan standing near a group of colleagues, laughing loudly, his posture confident. The moment his eyes landed on me, everything changed. His smile froze. The color drained from his face. He stared at me like he had seen something impossible. For once, he didn't look powerful. He looked exposed. I didn't look away. Compliments came quickly. A woman I didn't know smiled and told me my dress was beautiful. Another asked where I got my earrings. Then Caleb Rowland's wife, elegant and warm, stepped toward me and said, "You look absolutely stunning tonight." Her sincerity caught me off guard. Nathan appeared at my side, gripping my wrist just enough to be controlling. "What are you doing here?" he whispered sharply. "You weren't supposed to come." I gently pulled my hand free. "I was invited," I said calmly. He stayed close, hovering, whispering warnings meant to shrink me. I ignored them. I laughed when others laughed. I spoke when spoken to. I didn't perform. I simply existed. At dinner, Nathan leaned close again, his voice low and cruel. "Careful with the bread," he said. "You don't want to stretch that dress." Something inside me settled. I lifted my head and spoke clearly, my voice steady enough for the table to hear. "It's interesting," I said, "how I was good enough to support you financially when you had nothing, but suddenly not good enough to sit beside you." The table fell silent. Conversation stopped. Silverware paused midair. Nathan's face drained of color as he stared at me, stunned. Across from us, Caleb Rowland set his glass down slowly, his eyes fixed on Nathan with unmistakable disappointment. Nathan opened his mouth, but no words came. In that silence, I felt it shift. The power. The narrative. The truth. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one shrinking. I didn't wait for Nathan to recover. I didn't wait for him to explain himself or soften the moment with excuses. As the silence lingered around the table, heavy and uncomfortable, I pushed my chair back slowly and stood. My hands were steady. My heart was racing, but my body felt strangely calm, as if it had finally decided to protect me instead of panic for me. Nathan looked up at me, panic flickering behind his eyes. "Ilara," he said quietly, trying to sound composed. "Sit down." I looked at him for a long moment. 5 years of swallowed words pressed against my chest, but I didn't let them spill. I didn't need a speech. I didn't need tears. The truth had already landed, and everyone around us had felt it. "You will never speak to me like that again," I said evenly. My voice didn't shake. I wasn't loud, but the words carried. Heads turned. Conversations nearby stalled. Nathan's mouth opened, then closed again. For once, he had nothing ready. I turned away from him and walked toward the edge of the ballroom. With every step, I felt lighter, as though I was leaving pieces of myself behind that no longer belonged to me. I didn't look back. I didn't need to see his expression to know it had cracked. Near the doors, Maren appeared beside me like she had been waiting. She didn't ask questions. She didn't say a word. She simply linked her arm through mine, solid and warm, and together we walked out of the room. Behind us, the low hum of whispers followed, but none of them were aimed at me. For the first time, the shame wasn't mine to carry. The cool air of the hallway wrapped around me as the ballroom doors closed behind us. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for years. Maren squeezed my arm. "You did it," she said softly. I nodded, unable to speak yet. My chest felt tight, but it wasn't pain anymore. It was release. I didn't go home with Nathan that night. The days that followed moved quickly, almost as if life had been waiting for me to make that decision. I met with a lawyer in a quiet office filled with sunlight and calm voices. I told my story plainly. How I worked double shifts while Nathan studied. How my income paid for rent, food, bills, and emergencies. How my support allowed him to rise while I slowly disappeared. The lawyer listened carefully, then nodded. "You gave more than enough," she said. "And you're entitled to your share." Filing for divorce was painful, but it was clean. There were no dramatic fights, no screaming matches. Just paperwork, signatures, and an overwhelming sense of reclaiming something I had lost. Each document I signed felt like closing a door I had been standing in for too long. Nathan tried to call at first. Then he sent messages. Then long emails that alternated between anger and regret. I didn't respond. I had spent years explaining myself. I was done now. His life, however, began to unravel quietly. Word about the wedding traveled faster than he expected. In offices like his, reputation mattered more than performance. He wasn't fired, but he was moved aside. Projects were reassigned. Invitations stopped coming. The admiration he relied on thinned into polite distance. Meanwhile, my world expanded. I picked up sketching again, something I had abandoned years earlier after Nathan told me it was childish. I signed up for a weekend cooking course just because I wanted to learn something new. I started taking long morning walks along the harbor, breathing deeply without worrying how I looked or whether I was being watched. Maren stayed close through it all. Some nights we sat on her couch eating takeout and talking until midnight. Other nights we sat in silence, comfortable and unpressured. She never rushed my healing. She never questioned my choice. Slowly, my confidence returned. Not the kind built on praise or validation, but the quiet certainty of knowing who I was without someone measuring me. One evening, as I sat by the window with my sketch pad resting on my knees, the truth settled fully in my chest. Clear. Undeniable. Nathan told me I was too ugly to attend his director's wedding. But the truth was far simpler. I was never too ugly. I was just too strong to stay small for a man who needed me diminished to feel important. If someone you love ever makes you feel unworthy of standing beside them, ask yourself this honestly. Would you rather disappear to keep the peace, or walk away and keep yourself? Please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Your voice matters, and your story deserves to be heard.